There are proven practices, many simple, that can help keep our children safe.
On this week's Health Talk, we'll talk about summer safety with a pediatrician, mother, and strong advocate for kids and their safety.
Hello, I'm Dr. Vicki Smita.
And I'm Dr. Eric Mazer. Today we're going to talk about summer safety with Dr. Sarah Siegel. She's Clinical Director of Pediatrics at the Norwalk Community Health Center. And we have a very special guest today, Ruby. Ruby, Sarah, welcome to the set.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you for having me also.
Well,
Ruby,
we're so
we're
glad to
very
have
excited.
you. I think you may be our youngest guest ever, so I'm very excited to have you here.
How old are you, Ruby?
I'm 8 years old.
Terrific. And you go out in the summer and you do a lot of cool things, probably.
Yeah.
What is one of your favorite things to do in the
I
summer?
love bike riding.
You do?
And do you ride a two-wheeler without training wheels?
Yes.
And how long ago did you learn how to ride a two-wheeler?
When I just bought it, I learned how to ride.
Just like that? Did you fall and hurt yourself while you were learning, or did you learn right away?
I learned right away.
So who taught you? Your mom or your dad?
My dad.
Your dad taught you.
Good for Dad. So we have some safety things to talk about, right? So Ruby, when you ride your bike, what's probably the most important thing that you do before you get on your bike?
I usually always wear my helmet.
Excellent. Good
And that's
answer.
just what we wanted to talk about today.
Great.
So each year there's more than 275,000 injuries as a result of bike riding amongst
Say
children.
that number again.
275,000. Now 100,000 of those are head injuries. Thankfully, many of those are not serious, but nonetheless there's things that we can do to prevent this. Wearing a helmet the right way prevents 88% of head injuries amongst children when they're bicycle riding.
That's a pretty significant number.
Yeah.
If you think about
It's a
it.
small thing to do that makes a big difference.
Ruby, do you ever fall when you're riding on your bike?
Sometimes.
Yeah, it's almost inevitable that kids fall, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely.
And whether they hit their head or not is sort of a random event.
Absolutely.
So it's no matter how good a bike rider you are, you hit a little bit of sand, you hit a rock,
Sure.
you have to stop quickly or something. It's actually a fairly dangerous thing for kids to be doing, isn't it?
Well, I brought along some bike helmets to demonstrate the right sizing of a bike helmet for your child so that you can make sure that you're at least doing the best that you can to keep your child safe when they're out riding their bike.
Can I ask, do you have kids wear longer clothes, or should they wear gloves or anything like that to keep them getting scraped up? Or I know that's sort of hot at the height of the summer, and I know we recommend for skateboarders, we recommend those wrist protectors. But do you recommend those for kids?
I think it's a great idea. We don't routinely recommend them, but it certainly helps. What I do want to point out is that Ruby has on a closed-toe shoe, which I think is very important for bike riding because it's very easy to get a toe stuck in the gears or the pedal.
Sarah, because no flip-flops, right? Kids love to wear
No
flip-flops
flip-flops
in the summer, and I know my kids
And
would get
no
on their
bare
bike
feet.
with
And certainly no bare feet.
Right. So being an advocate of the proper clothing and the proper shoes is just maybe not just as important, but very important in addition to helmets. So Ruby, will you help us demonstrate how to wear a bike helmet properly?
I would love to.
Excellent. All right. So
We're going to start with
ones.
3 different sizes here, and we'll have Ruby clip it on for us. Now I'm going to point out some features that you want to look for in a bike helmet. Now this one here, I'd like to point out the top of the helmet is resting above her hairline. That's too high.
Okay.
And I bet you, Ruby, if you could just tilt your head back like that, you see it's slipping back even further. Okay. And also, you want to see a Y with the strap here. And this one almost gives you that Y, but the fact that the helmet sits at or above the hairline shows us that this one is definitely too large.
Yeah, this feels very large.
Yes. All right.
So what
let's
should
try.
it feel like on her head?
It should feel snug, but not tight.
So just
Okay.
a nice firm fit all the way around.
Exactly.
Now kids are growing. Do they have helmets that you can put pads in? And if they do you recommend them, or do you recommend getting new helmets at each stage?
There's often, and you can take this one off and we can show you, there's often a feature on the back of helmets, different on each brand, that allows you to adjust the size of the helmet. At a certain point, you're going to have to replace your helmet and move on to a bigger size. but it could last certainly for 2 to 3 years as long as you're adjusting it properly.
Okay.
So now let's try this one.
And how pricey are bike helmets, Sarah, for somebody who's on a budget, and it may be difficult for them to, get proper equipment? Are there helmets that are reasonably priced? I mean, you can get high-end just about anything.
Sure, you
but
could get a racing helmet with all
Right.
sorts of details and features, but really all you need is one that fits right,
Right.
and keeps you safe, and it could definitely be under $20.
Okay,
Under
that's
20.
a good
This
point.
feels a little small.
So this one almost looks good to my eye, but Ruby is telling me it feels too small.
Does it feel tight, Ruby, around your head?
Yeah.
So it's just 200.
Okay.
It's giving a squeezing feeling?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll try one more.
Is there anything you can see on the outside that tells you that that's too tight?
Well, this one, if you're getting to the end of the strings with adjusting it, or if we can just take this off you, I can show you. There's 2 areas that you loosen. If you're coming to the ends here, this one
Then it's
not
probably too
quite.
small.
Then it's too small. It's
Yeah.
time to upgrade. And we have one more size to try.
Are all helmets made to a certain specification, so any helmet that a parent may buy is adequate, or should they spend more to upgrade to one that's safer than another?
As long as you're buying a standard bicycle helmet, you're certainly fine. And it's the most important thing is that you're wearing the right size and you're wearing it properly. I want to point out something so simple as buckling it. Sometimes you see a kid throw on their helmet and hop on their bike, and
they
the
don't
chin
buckle.
strap is not even buckled. Now, how does this one feel?
This feels just right.
This one, all right. So then I think
That's
we
like
have a good fit. And what I would like to point out is that it sits right above her eyebrows.
Okay.
And can you tilt your head back, Ruby?
And
It doesn't
move.
slip.
Yeah.
And then if you could open your mouth a few times. I don't know if you guys can see this, but
We can see the Y.
the Y is moving. So the Y that you're seeing here under the ear and also on this side is moving. And that shows that your chin strap is tight enough.
Okay.
You want, when you open your mouth,
Okay. So this is
be
not
tugging on the
put
strap.
it on for comfort. You put it on
okay.
so it's snug.
exactly.
But not tight.
Exactly, precisely.
I've also heard that the bike helmets, if they have been in a crash, if they've been damaged, you should discard them and use a new one.
Absolutely.
So even if it looks okay, are there any signs you should look at to say that the helmet is damaged?
Certainly any cracks, any wearing away of the padding on the inside could be an issue as well. You know, we like to hand me down a lot of our items
Yeah.
to our
Right.
next children or our neighbors or friends.
But this is one that you really want to make sure that you're handing
Exactly.
down an intact helmet. Now, I think it's also important to mention, we talked about bike riding, Ruby, and thank you so much for all of your input on that, but skateboarding. So I really want to take a minute to talk about that,
We
because a
actually
lot
had
of
a
kids
guest on
skateboard.
about a year ago who had severe injury skateboarding down a hill and hit a sewer grate.
And we hear about these cases all the time. We have
Absolutely.
this is not an infrequent event where a skateboarder goes down a hill and is not wearing a helmet and hits their head. So maybe we can say a couple of words about that. That is recommended, right? If you're skateboarding,
Absolutely.
you should be wearing a helmet.
Certainly, and I think that we're learning so much more about head injuries, even ones that may seem mild, falling off of a skateboard, or the types of head injuries that happen in sports, but we're learning so much more about the damage that does over time.
Right? And repeated injuries, right? Concussions.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to ask Ruby. Ruby, is it okay to wear helmets? Is it cool to wear a helmet?
Yes.
So the kids now feel that it's cool?
Yes.
Because it's just no helmet's any good if the kids don't wear it.
Right.
And are there ways you can decorate it, or are there ones that kids like more than others?
Yeah.
Well, here's a great example, right? If you had to choose,
Yeah, which one
You
would
could
you
get a-
choose, just in terms of design?
And you can also get.
You like that one?
yeah, she likes that one.
Now, what do you like about that one?
I like that it fits me, and
Okay.
I also like that it has stuff on it.
The stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, and kids can decorate them, I guess, on their
Absolutely.
own. So it's really
Personalize.
key to get the
Stickers.
kids
Sure.
to use that. Now, again, I'm sort of getting old here, but so I just only got grandchildren. But so it really has become part of the culture. So kids
Absolutely. Kids are
Kids
wearing.
and adults. I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
people who
yeah.
bike ride, and I think we should make a point to say, there are adults who are
absolutely.
riding their bikes all over.
Now, I have an old bike helmet that's made of styrofoam and has a little thin thing, and it looks like a bowl on my head. I presume that these are a little bit further along.
Yes,
than that.
Eric, I think it's time to
So I should
upgrade.
toss those. I should toss that.
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
so it was.
And just to add one
I have a lot of historical artifacts in my closet.
Just to add one other point, you raised skateboarding, which is such an important reminder to wear a helmet for skateboarding. Also scootering.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Razor scooters.
Razor
right.
scooters, absolutely. And I think that we could tend to be a little more lax about helmets on those devices, but same rules apply.
Yeah, that's a good reminder, and I'll make sure that my son watches the show because his Razor scooter, and he seemed to be one and the same, and he just takes off up the driveway before I get a chance to yell out my reminder about the helmet. Absolutely.
Yep.
Ruby, we want to thank you so much for coming on the show and appreciate your opinion on the design of these helmets. It's really so important, and it's glad to see we're raising kids today who are willing to do the things that are necessary to keep them safe.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ruby.
Thank you
You've
for
been a great
coming on.
guest.
Thank you for having me.
So Vicki and I will be back after the short break with Dr. Siegel, and we'll be talking more about safety for children. Very pertinent topic.
Salad on Saturday, fruit on Friday, throw a ball Thursday. Water Wednesday, touch your toes Tuesday. Let's move Monday, swap a snack Sunday.
60 minutes of physical activity a day and eating well can help get your child healthy. So keep them active and eating well every day. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov. That's letsmove.gov.
Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys are much too much. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We got the spirit. We're hot. We can't be stopped. We're gonna beat them and bust them. Beat them.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life.
Let's get a little bit rowdy. R-O-W-D-Y.
Take time to be a
One
dad
more
today.
time. Oh, those boys are much too much. Those boys.
Bring out the action hero in you. Fuel up right and get energized. Be part of the greatest action movie ever. The first movie that puts you in the action. Show us how you train and eat like an action hero. Join in at actionheroalliance.com.
The first 30 seconds are all I remember. My doctor told me I had cancer. When the shock was over, I met with a cancer specialist at Norwalk Hospital. We weighed all my options: surgery, radiation therapy, chemotherapy, even the latest clinical trials. Their Whittingham Cancer Centre offered me personalised care, hope and leading cancer physicians. And I know great care. Besides being a cancer survivor, I'm also an ICU nurse, and I chose Norwalk Hospital.
Hi, Vicki and I are back with Dr. Sarah Siegel. We're talking about child safety. We talked about helmets for kids on bikes and skateboards.
And we had a wonderful guest who demonstrated for
wonderful
us.
guest. I wish you were still here. No offense to you. So there's other things, obviously, that kids do in the summer. They're very active, and nothing worse than a tragedy when a kid gets hurt. So what are some of the other things we should be thinking about?
Well, summer is filled with fun and fun activities, but I think it's important to take a moment to think about the more serious side, and like you mentioned, preventing these tragedies. So each year, 1,000 children die of drowning, and most of these drownings occur in swimming pools. So
Wow.
I think that it's important that we take some time today to talk about water safety.
I think that's a great point.
You know,
because a lot
those
of
figures,
people-
they're hard to even comprehend.
Yeah.
But that would mean that just on average, 20 people in every state, 20 kids in every state, die each summer of drowning. That's like one every other day.
And these are all preventable, obviously.
Absolutely
Yeah.
preventable.
In Connecticut, I was saying, but that's terrible.
It is, and a lot of these accidents happen because children are, somebody thinks that one parent thinks the other parent is watching, or
Right.
Folks are socializing at a gathering and the kids are in the pool and nobody's really watching.
And
Even
it-
though all
it-
the adults may be around.
And it can happen so quickly.
It can happen
You know, This
very
is
quickly.
not, you said again, you take your, I've got the 2 granddaughters at home, they have a pool in their backyard, and
Yeah.
I just know that they're great swimmers, but you take
Right.
your eye off them for 2 or 3 minutes, and
You can't assume
you
that
don't-
just because they're good swimmers that they'll be fine and you don't have to watch them, right, Sarah? I
Absolutely.
think-
Supervision is the absolute most important thing that you can do to keep your children safe around water. So you can put them in swim lessons, and that's wonderful. They can gain confidence in the water and become good swimmers, but that does not replace direct adult supervision. You can put life vests and floaties and noodles in the pool, and they can wear different type of floating devices, but those absolutely do not replace direct supervision from an adult.
Right.
That's supervision 100% of the time.
100% of the time.
Eyes on the kids.
Absolutely. And when there's a party, oftentimes you feel like adults are watching, but if there isn't one identified adult, then
Yeah.
no one's really responsible for what's happening by the body of water.
And that's really the point that I want us to really get across to our audience today, that even though there may be numerous adults around that scene, around that pool, there has to be somebody who's designated. So, you know, somebody saying, okay, I'm it for the next half hour.
Right.
And then I pass the baton to you and you're it for the next half hour. So really to have somebody designated who's not going to be as engaged in the conversation and the social aspect of the event, but
Right.
really is going to be watching that pool.
I think identifying the person watching the pool is very important, and not assuming that someone is. The other thing I want to bring up is that it's not always a deep body of water. I want to talk a little bit about kiddie pools,
Yeah.
the little plastic pool that maybe you set up in your backyard and fill with a couple of inches of water. Those can be just as dangerous, especially for the very young children under the age of 4.
Is there anything you should teach your children, the young children, about water safety that helps to protect them?
The most important thing to teach them is that they're only allowed in or near the water when there's an adult watching them. And anything you can teach them, and I'm probably going to say the same thing over and over, doesn't replace supervision. Because if they fall in unexpectedly and get scared, all of the swim lessons might not help them if they're feeling
Because they're
frightened
panicked.
and nervous and
Yeah.
panicked.
Right.
Exactly. So the direct supervision is important. But there are some things that you can do. When you're not directly watching the pool, you want to clear all the toys out of the pool and off the pool deck, and take all the toys out of the kiddie pool and away from the kiddie pool, so that children aren't tempted to walk over and reach in and maybe fall in.
Ah, that's a good point.
With your kiddie pool, you also, when you're not using it, and this might seem a little cumbersome to have to empty and refill, the best thing really to do is empty it and flip it over.
Think of it as a way of watering your lawn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Use it to water your plants.
Now, I've wondered this. We've been to events and parties where the family hosting will hire a teenage lifeguard. Do you have any comments about that one way or the other? Is that a good thing to do? Does that replace the presence of the parents then by the pool watching? How do you feel about that? And maybe there's no right or wrong answer, but it always makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Right.
Maybe it shouldn't. I don't know.
Well, I think I'll probably say that same sentence again. None of it replaces direct supervision from the parent.
Yeah.
I think it can be a very helpful thing if you're hiring someone that is a certified lifeguard.
Right.
But nothing, again, replaces everyone just being watchful and careful.
Is there a certain age where you can allow your children to play in the water unsupervised? If they're swimmers, I don't have a good sense of when are they responsible enough, or is it safe enough for them to play by themselves?
It's always a good idea to either swim with an adult watching or with a buddy, because accidents can happen. Certainly we've heard about pool drains,
Right.
children getting caught, whether it be a piece of jewelry or part of the swimsuit, gets caught in a pool drain, and you can be the strongest swimmer in the world and still have a tragedy
So that's
as a result
another-
of
Not to
that.
swim alone.
So swimming alone is never a good idea.
Absolutely.
That's a good point. I mean, I can see all the good reasons for that.
Now, there is a lot of equipment. I was actually just at my granddaughter's birthday party, and I was impressed at the array of flotation devices that the kids came equipped with.
Yeah.
You mentioned that none substitute for adult supervision. Are
Absolutely.
there any they should stay away from? Are there any that are particularly dangerous or give you a false sense of security? I mean, sometimes I guess I worry about those little swimmies on the arms if they're too loose.
Right, they could slip off or slip down to the lower part of the arm. There are some that support the child around the chest, almost like a donut around the chest. And depending on the size of the child, they can tip over in that. The Red Cross certified devices are probably best, in addition to the close supervision.
Because I do know that from scuba diving, there are certain flotation devices that tend to tip you forward, so you have to be careful. I know a lot of the scuba vests that one wears, they don't naturally make you buoyant straight up, so you have to be careful about that. I don't know if any of the, I guess a malfitting device could do that to a kid, or something that's put on in the wrong way. How about the stuff that they use on boats, the life preservers?
The bulky life preserver. Well, usually what you see now are more of the smaller vest, which can be, which if we're talking about boating safety, is a must, is absolutely a must that your child...
I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm glad we're talking about this a little bit, because that is another part to water safety. It's not just the swimming pool, although most accidents happen there, but people do go out on boats, and that's important to mention. Child should not be on a boat without having an appropriate device.
And adults should probably watch their alcohol intake when they're out on boats. I think there's a culture out there where somehow you go out and you drink too much, and again, boating accidents can be as deadly as any other accident.
Certainly at a pool party, be careful with the alcohol consumption.
Let's talk. Can we talk a couple of minutes? I know we don't have that much time left, and we're covering so much ground on this show, and I love it. But I'd like to talk about sun exposure a little bit, just to shift gears slightly, because that's definitely a safety risk in a different way, but certainly can lead to long-term effects down the road, and some immediate discomfort from sunburn and sun poisoning. Do you want to say a few words about that, Sarah?
Sure. You know, we do most of our sun damage to our skin during our childhood. So this is a really important time for parents to be paying attention to how much sun exposure their children are getting and what types of sunscreen that they're using. So above the age of 6 months, children can use and should always use sunscreen before they head outside. Under 6 months, really the recommendation is just to keep those children away from the direct sun. They're too young for using the sunscreen, and they could develop problems from the sun exposure very quickly.
Right. But for older kids, like you mentioned, they should always wear sunscreen when they leave the house. Is there a number? What is that magic number?
I think
because
that
we all wonder, you know, is SPF 70 better than SPF 50? What is SPF first? Why don't we start with that?
So SPF is the sun protective factor, and it's actually a calculation about how long you can stay in the sun without burning with or without the sunscreen.
Okay.
When you're choosing a sunscreen, you want to choose a broad spectrum which covers both the UVA and the UVB rays. And you want to choose a sunscreen that's above an SPF of 30. Now, we're starting to see sunscreens of 60, 70, maybe even higher. What the FDA says is that we're not so sure about the numbers above 50. So if you're choosing between 30 and 50, you're fine. And they're really recommending that above 50, those sunscreens just be labeled as 50 plus.
Okay.
And actually, there was some interesting, one of the major consumer magazines recently published something on sunscreens showing no advantage. They actually tested them and showed no advantage once you go above 30.
Above 30.
So you're paying, it's a marketing ploy more than fact. But I want to just say a couple of things, because we are running about time. There is an epidemic of melanoma in this country. That is a fatal skin cancer. And we know that that is directly related to the number of blistering sunburns that people get during their adolescent years. So a lot of what my generation did, lying out there with our baby oil, was is now created that epidemic. And if you want to protect your children, that's something, and protect your teenagers, these blistering sunburns should never happen.
And it really, like the bike safety, the helmet safety, it teaches them good habits to, it becomes part of their culture to have sunscreen on every time they go out, just the same way that Ruby would wear a helmet every time she went out on her bicycle. And that really ensures that as they become teenagers, they'll have these good habits to carry with them into adulthood.
A lot of great tips today. Thank you so much. Protect your children, carry it into your adult life. But when we come back, we're going to keep Sarah on the set, and we're going to answer today's health question.
Right now, let's take a look at some of our upcoming events sponsored by Norwalk Hospital.
first 30 seconds are all I remember. My doctor told me I had cancer. When the shock was over, I met with a cancer specialist at Norwalk Hospital. We weighed all my options: surgery, radiation therapy, chemotherapy, even the latest clinical trials. Their Whittingham Cancer Centre offered me personalised care, hope and leading cancer physicians. And I know great care. Besides being a cancer survivor, I'm also an ICU nurse, and I chose Norwalk Hospital.
Nice. No.
Oops. Yeah, sure.
Let's go.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy.
Works every time.
Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.
Mom, can I have $1?
Yeah, it's right. I think my purse is upstairs on the bed.
It's not here.
Check the dining room.
No.
What about your sister's room?
It's not there either.
The upstairs closet? The downstairs closet?
There are no more closets.
Moms everywhere are finding ways to keep kids active and healthy. Get ideas, get involved, get going at letsmove.gov.
This week's health question is, what can I do about my child's chronic ear infections? And we have a pediatrician here to help us answer that question, Dr. Sarah Siegel. What do you say, Sarah?
Well, in younger children, there are a few things that you can do to help prevent ear infections. Pacifier use and bottle use actually can contribute to frequent ear infections. So you want to get rid of the pacifier and wean from the bottle. Another thing that can contribute to ear infections is smoking around a child, smoking cigarettes around a child. So certainly no smoking around the child, and for the parent's own health, it's another great reason to quit.
The children's anatomy is different. It's smaller, everything is smaller, and there's an airspace behind our eardrum that needs to be kept open. It drains into the nose. And so I would think the pacifier or the milk bottle, does it create swelling of the tissues back there, or does it create
A mechanical
aspiration? Why do those contribute to ear infections?
Well, what you're referring to is the eustachian tube, and it has some trouble draining when the child is constantly making the sucking motion, which I'm trying to demonstrate.
Yeah.
So if you're doing less of that and using more of a straw cup, then you can cut down on some ear infections.
What constitutes chronic ear infections? So is there a magic number? How many ear infections would a child have before they're classified as having chronic? Because all children get an ear infection at some point in their infancy or early childhood.
And we do see some kids that every month or every 2 months are back in the doctor's office with an ear infection. After they've had about 4 ear infections, we usually recommend that they see a specialist, an ENT doctor, to take a look at the ears, take a look at the anatomy, and decide if maybe they're a candidate to have tubes placed in the ears.
And now, that's a way of ventilating that chamber that we just talked about.
Yeah. Would you say in your experience that most of these children that you see with chronic ear infections could be prevented because of lifestyle modifications, either exposure to cigarette smoke or pacifier or bottle use? Would you say it's about half of those? Just to sort of put it in perspective, how much could we be doing to prevent these?
I would say that it's less than half. A lot of times it's just the size of the child, the age, the shape of the space in the head where that airspace is. So as parents, we want to do what we can.
Absolutely.
To reduce.
But we shouldn't beat ourselves up if the kids are sick.
Right,
exactly. Well, thank you so much. We're so glad you had you here to answer that question. If you have a question at home that you'd like to ask on Health Talk, please contact Vicki and me at healthtalk@norwalkhealth.org.
We would like to thank our guests today, Dr. Sarah Siegel and Ruby, for coming on our show. And see you next week on Health Talk.
Bye-bye, and stay well, stay safe.